Hello. Technology. All right, I think maybe we're live. It still has like the Lodi sign. I'll just keep talking, and the benefit or not, this video is going to be very applicable. So we'll give a few more seconds to see if I'm good in the other live broadcasts, and that looks good. Okay, good. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. My name is Crystal Nerman, and I am the owner of the Dog Psychology and Training Center. And today's video is going to be keeping your dog contained, specifically on a place command. But if your dog isn't ready for a place command or doesn't have a behavior to be present during trick-or-treaters, we'll also talk about what to do for those type of dogs as well. We call them antisocial dogs. So it's not that they're necessarily a bad dog, but maybe they are a reactive dog, or maybe they could be aggressive. And so these are the best dogs to just kind of contain elsewhere. And we'll go over that. But today's video is going to be specifically about place. What is the place command? How would it benefit your dog? How does it benefit trick-or-treaters? And it's just really fun for purposes other than trick-or-treaters. So even if trick-or-treating doesn't go on this year, sorry, my eye's itching. Even if trick-or-treating doesn't go on this year, it's still going to be a very practical command to have for your dog for a multitude of reasons. The holidays are coming up, so placing is a great time, or it is a great time to put your dog in a place command during the eating festivities for Thanksgiving and Christmas, especially if your dog has a stomach allergy or begs for food. Use it when company is coming and going, so your dog doesn't run out of the house. Specifically for trick-or-treaters, if we are not the trick-or-treating family that goes door to door, if we stay home and treat kids, which we did before we had kids, we would have our dog's place. And so it was a really great way to show off our dogs in their cute little Halloween costumes without having them terrify little kids that maybe are afraid of dogs, or running out the door and us trying to go catch them and run them down versus handing out candy. And so it was a great way to have them kind of present in the background, but not where, they could traumatize a little child who maybe does have a severe dog fear, whether it is something that they just developed or whether it was something that has cause, like they were attacked by a dog. I don't want to traumatize that kid on what's supposed to be a fun evening of the year. So we'll get right into it. So we'll start with the antisocial dogs. So if your dog is of the antisocial variety, meaning your dog may have reactivity issues, maybe it's fine with people, but it may have reactivity issues with dogs. Sometimes we take our dogs trick-or-treating because they're part of our kids' costumes. And so you don't know if a dog may or may not show up at your door. So again, another reason to kind of classify your dog as an antisocial dog for this reason or this purpose, even if they're typically fine with people, just not other pets or dogs, because you never know what might come to your door. If a dog has had a close snap, bite, or has actually broken skin on another person or animal, I would consider them antisocial and they should not be present for trick-or-treaters. And so these are the dogs that I'm going to give some parameters for of what you can do for them. I had one dog caster who was antisocial because he has feet. He would shake and cower. And so it wasn't fun for him to be present on the place command with the other dogs who loved people because he was traumatized. Like he was just like, oh my gosh, there's too many people. I'm an introvert and there's just too many people. And so instead of forcing him to endure that all night, we know who he is. And it's not a bad thing. He loves us. He loves giving us time and affection and attention, just not strangers. And he's not stranger's dog. He's mine. So we would just put him in his crate for that night. And that was his choice. We have a dog room and we would put him in the dog room and he'd always end up in his crate and he'd even paw his door closed. Like that was his safe spot. That's where he felt like he couldn't be hurt. So he would do that to himself. So then on out, we just kept closing his door and latching it just to add security for him. And he totally appreciated that. So don't think of crating your dog on this adventurous night as a bad thing. For some dogs, the introverted dogs for sure, they're going to praise you for it, right? So if you're an introvert out there, you know what I'm talking about. Parties are fun, but as an adult human, you can go for as long or short as you'd like and then leave when you're feeling at capacity, right? When you're like, my introvert needs to go home and just pick up a book or watch TV. and get away from all of this, right? Like, I love people. I really do. I'm really outgoing. I'm really great at talking to people and introducing around a lot of people. While I enjoy every minute of it, my energy is just dropping. And the same is true for, we kept putting him in stressful situations. He very, very likely would become that dog would snap or bite at somebody. So know your dog, if they're an introvert or an extrovert, if they would like to be present or if they would not like to be present. And don't feel guilty either way. Your dog is who he is or she is. You are who you are, right? So it's nothing to be upset about or anything. Just know who they are. So keeping them crated is the best solution, especially if you have a dog that will scratch the door or walls. If you can keep them in a room, locked in a room, that's fine, as long as they're not going to destroy the room or anything in the room. Again, you're going to have a lot of people knocking and ringing your doorbell, and little kid sounds and maybe adult sounds and a lot of talking that might stress an anxious dog out, or might cause a reactive or aggressive dog to burst, right? Like, they're going to hear this happening and they know it's in the house. They can smell all these smells of kids and they're going to lose it, right? So having them in their crate is going to be the safest for them and your house, because we don't want them to chew something that could hurt them or destroy something that would cost you thousands of dollars. It's happened. Dogs have destroyed whole couches, whole beds. Dogs have chewed through doors. So all of these things, I mean, dogs are very powerful animals. They can do a lot of damage, and damage to your house is important. And I definitely don't want that to happen, but imagine what's on the inside of that dog, right? If they're actually destroying that kind of furniture, they're going to have wooden shards in their stomach, possibly a lot of stuffing from the bed or the couch. And that could be mass surgery or death for your dog. So we don't want that either. So crating them is the safest. If they can be locked in another room and you know they'll be fine, then that's cool. Or you can have somebody, a member of the household, just chill out in that room. They can be watching TV in that room with the dog. So it's just kind of like life's going on, nothing else, nothing. Don't worry about anything out there. We're having a party in here. That's totally fine too. Keeping your dog on a leash, so important. I love trick-or-treating with my kids, and we will, we go to a lot of houses, and my kids love dogs. Surprisingly, you would think that being a dog trainer and having tons of dogs coming through, they'd be over them. But dogs are still one of their favorite animals, so they love seeing dogs. But what's frustrating for me as a mother and as a dog trainer, and my husband as well, is when we knock on the door, say trick or treat, and they open the door, and two barky dogs come running out around my kids' feet. And I'm like, oh, great. And so I get to be the mean mom that's like, don't touch these dogs. Don't touch them. Don't pet them. I don't know these dogs. They're yipping at my kids. So yes, they could be yipping excitedly, but they're also out of control. The owners are not controlling them. And so I don't know if they might snap or bite at my kids. And so it's just very unnerving for me to have that happen. I've also had people open the door and their dog is very well-mannered and stays inside. And the kids are like, oh, your puppy's so cute. And then the owner will say, would you like to pet them? And then I, as the other adult of this conversation, gets to say, yes, please, or no, thank you. And I get to judge the dog's behavior from that short moment of them staying inside the doorway. And so we almost always pet those dogs because I can tell those dogs have impulse control. They're respectful. They mind their owners. And I would love for my kids to interact with those well-behaved dogs. So keeping your dog on a leash, okay? And so those dogs that are well-behaved and don't run out the door, whether they're on a leash or not, they're doing what they should be doing, right? And if your dog is not going to be doing what you would like them to do or what's safe for the community, then keep them on a leash. Okay, so now we're going to get to the place command. For those dogs that love people and you have, what day is it? So it's the 8th. So you have plenty of time to start working on the place command. Your dogs may or may not be ready for this Halloween, but definitely next Halloween and definitely by Thanksgiving or Christmas. So if you keep practicing now and building up little distractions at a time, you could totally have your dog ready. It's possible for trick-or-treating. Other dogs take more time to learn things. It doesn't mean your dog's not smart or that they have a learning disability. It just means they take more time. So be patient with them, have grace, and then hopefully they'll be ready for Thanksgiving. So place command, let's go over what the place command is. The place command is one of my favorite commands because I can point to an object that my dog can fit on and say place. And to my dog, that means go to that object, put all 4 feet on it. I don't want them laying half off of it. I want all 4 feet on it. And then they have to stay on that object until I give them permission to get off. So it's basically like an invisible cage, right? An invisible kennel. It has this perimeter around it, a force field that they cannot get off. And the only rule for them is to not get off until I give them permission to, okay? All 4 feet have to be on it, and they cannot get off until I give them permission to. What can happen is your dog can spin, jump, roll over, as long as they stay on the place cot. They can lay down, they can go to sleep, they can sit down, sit down, sit down. They can sit, stand down. They can do whatever they want except step off. You can give them toys to play on with there, especially if it's going to be for trick-or-treating. That's probably going to be about 3 to 4 hours. They can place that whole time if they're an adult dog. If it's a puppy, they're going to need a lot of potty breaks. You can give them treats. You can definitely reward them. You can give them long-term treats, the treats that take them a while to get through, or you can give them short-term treats for really good behavior. So maybe a kid came and they didn't bark, or they didn't have that excitable burst of energy where they were like spinning uncontrollably on the cot, but they actually sat patiently. I would treat that. And I would say, good dog, that's exactly the kind of behavior I want to see from you when we have company. So all kinds of things can happen on the cot, on the place command, except stepping off. A place object can be anything your dog can fit on, but not too big. So it can be a dog bed, it can be a doormat, it can be one of those raised pet cots that you might see us use in our dog training videos. We like to teach the place command on a raised surface, an elevated surface like those dog cots, because it puts a very clear, definable boundary for your dog. If it is a doormat that you're trying to practice on, it's going to be a little confusing at first because the doormat is like maybe 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch off the ground. So if your dog's laying and they start to like roll off, they're really not going to notice it. If they're laying on a place command and they start to roll off, they notice that, right? It's like a 4-inch drop to the ground. So they're like, whoa, it woke me up, and they can pull themselves back on. So it teaches them those boundaries. And then when we move to those flatter surfaces, they understand those boundaries and they will mind them. So we usually recommend starting with the place cot. We start with the place cot or something that's elevated. But then they can place on any surface they can fit on. It can be a chair if your dog's small enough, or if your dog's allowed on furniture. I wouldn't do like a human size, like king or queen size bed, or a full size bed. Maybe a twin bed if you have a big dog. A couch is too big. An area rug for a room is way too big. And so that just makes the boundary really confusing to your dog because it's too much space. So something big enough your dog can fit on and be able to spin and turn and comfortably lay down on. That's what we're looking for. That's the perfect size. Okay, so I think I went over all the rules. Now I'm going to talk about how to teach the command. It's actually really easy. You do need to have a collar your dog can't slip out of. You do need to have a leash, and you do need to have rewards. So we often talk about love languages for your dogs, finding out your dog's love language. That's how we reward our dogs and our client dogs that come to us, because we want to fill their love tank. We want them to feel loved and appreciated for making the right choice, not just giving them something that we think should make them happy, but it doesn't really fill their love tank. So not all dogs are treat motivated. Not all dogs are word motivated. Some dogs you can say, good dog, and they're like, yes, I feel like king of the world. Other dogs are like, yeah, I know I'm great. So what else you got? Right? And so we want to find out what's going to fill that love tank. So you know your dog, you can figure that out. We have tons of videos about love languages, though, if you want to go search our pages and find them. But finding that love language, have that present. So if that's physical touch, if it's words of affirmation where you can say verbally, good dog, if it is treats or objects, so gifts could be treats or toys. I would maybe do treats for the intermittent rewarding. And then when I want them to stay on the place, I would end it with that high value reward of a toy that they can endure or play with longer than that treat, or a longer treat that's going to last them a little bit longer for a big praise moment. For the dogs that are physical touch, I might, when they get on it and they stay on it, great. Instead of throwing a treat on the cot, I would actually wait for them to I would either pet them nicely, calmly. Those are my short, intermittent bursts of praise. And then when they've done a fantastic job, like maybe they held it for 5 minutes for the first time, when I give them that release word, which we say break, When we say break, they get to come off the cot. And that is when we have that like loving cuddle, hug, mini wrestle session of me, scratching their ears and loving them all over and petting them all over and just making them feel like you are the most important dog in the world right now because you did everything right. And so they start to see that place has a lot of positive value as well. So have all those ready to go. Figure out your dog's love language, a leash and a collar. All right, so you're gonna have your dog on a leash, making sure the collar, they can't slip out of it. And so you're going to start maybe 5-6 feet away from your place object, and you're just gonna walk your dog to it. And you're gonna hold the leash closer to, so you're gonna have one hand holding the handle, and then the other hand's gonna be holding it maybe a foot or maybe 2 feet away from your dog's collar, if you have a really tiny dog, so that you can help guide them to the cot or the bed or the doormat. And then right when you get to it, so like maybe 6 inches before or a foot before, I usually pause and stop. And then I say place and I keep walking again. And I walk all the way up to the top of that place object. So I don't go past it, but I go right up to the top of it and I stop. And when I do that, it's because I want the dog's full body to get on that cot or that bed or that object and then stop. If you take 1 step or 2 steps to the place and then stop, but you haven't actually got to the top of it, your dog's only going to be halfway on it. Okay, so you want to go all the way up to the edge of the top of that object and then stop. If your dog is having some hesitancy to get on it, maybe it's a new bed or a new doormat, or they're just totally weirded out by the fact you have them on a collar and leash in the house, don't take the collar and leash off. That's a big mistake. But you can totally stop working on the place for a moment and you get on that object if you can, and kind of condition your dog to like it. So you're just showing your dog that it's a safe place. It's a lot of fun stuff here. We're gonna have a great time if you get on it. And so you're not forcing them, but I want them to go at their own pace. So once your dog's comfortable with it, then we're gonna start that process over. So once your dog is on the place, okay, so you walked to it, you stopped about a foot away, you paused, and then you said place, and you kept walking. Your dog got all the way on it, all 4 feet. And you can use that leash to guide your dog. So if he has 1 foot off, just give him a little tug forward, not a tug, but just a gentle pull to get all 4 feet on there. Sorry, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Fall allergies are here. So once they're on the cot or the object, the bed or any place object, you will, within like a second or two, say break, and they immediately get a step off. And literally a second or two. I want them to get on it and then get right back off of it. So you're like, oh, well, that was easy. I could do that again. That's exactly what we want, right? We want them to want to do it again. So we go back, we start away, we walk up to it, we stop and pause, and we say place, they get on. And maybe this time we throw a treat on the place cot, and they're like, oh, surprise. And then we say break, and they get to go off again. And then maybe the next time we hold it for 30 seconds. And then maybe 2 minutes, and then 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes. And when you start to get to those long holds of 5 and 10 minutes, your dog might start testing you, right? Like they might be like, okay, so we normally get off. What if I step off now? And that's where that leash should always be in your hand, because as soon as they lift that paw to step off, hopefully before it hits the ground, but even if it hits the ground, you have them by the leash and you're going to say no place, and you're going to give them a little tug back towards the place. So whatever direction they're trying to step off, you're going to tug in the opposite direction. Not hard. I just want like a little tap on their shoulder. Like, no, back it up. So just a little tug on that leash to say no place. And they're like, oh, okay. So I guess I stay here, because they're going to learn. They stay there until you say what? Break. And you don't have to use the word break. That's what we use. Some people say okay. Some people say free. Some people say easy. I've had one client, he was a military man and he wanted to say at ease. And so that was his release word. He'd say at ease, and then the dog was free to do whatever he wanted. So that was really cool too. But whatever word you want it to be consistent with using it, and make sure it's a word that the whole family can agree on and use in consistency. Use consistently, not inconsistently. I meant like whatever. Pregnancy brain, it's a legit thing. So having that, building up to that, having them hold it for 2, 5, 10 minutes, and I'm talking zero distractions. After they can do that, then I want you to start maybe dropping a treat 2 feet away from the cot. And they're like, oh, was that mine? And they're going to try to step off and go get it. Again, using your leash immediately, as soon as the one paw comes off, we're going to try to catch them before all 4 come off. If all 4 come off, it's okay. Just going to use that leash to guide that pressure back and say no place and get them back up on there, all 4 feet. And hopefully not let them get that piece of kibble or treat, because then they just won the battle, right? Like, you're going to win the war. It's a good war. It's a happy war of teaching place. But we don't want them to have any little victories, right? Because then they start to think, oh, if I have little victories, maybe I don't always have to listen. That's not what we want. So make sure they don't get that treat or that toy or whatever you're using. And you're going to pick it up. And you can say break. And then you can take them back to the place cot, have them place. And then you're going to drop it again. And I want to get to the point where your dog maybe flinches like he wants it, but he doesn't step off because he's waiting for that permission word. That's when I would say, when he flinches but doesn't get off, that's when I would say break and let the dog go get that reward. You did a fantastic job. Great impulse control. Let me reward you for that. And then other times, so don't always do that. Other times I might pick up that treat and then give it to my dog on the cot to let them know, again, not all good things happen when you get off. Good things happen when you're still on too. And good behavior is rewarded. Even if it was something that fell out of your area that you could get, I'm still going to make sure you get something for that. And so that is exactly how we start practicing place. If you do this, we typically would say do 20 minutes at a time on average. You can have a dog place for 5 minutes. You can have a dog place for an hour or 2 hours or 3 or 4 hours, as long as you do offer potty breaks. You're going to let them get off, go potty, then come back. But because they can move around and do things on the cot, it's not something that gets super uncomfortable for them or that they're over. They just get to be excited right here, right? And so we typically recommend practicing at home, maybe while you're watching a TV show. So that's 20 to 30 minutes, having them put the cot or the dog bed or the mat or whatever right under the TV or right beside the TV, so that as you're watching TV, you can see out of your peripheral vision if your dog's trying to sneak away. Super important, because if it's out of your sight and you're watching TV and then you look over and your dog's gone, shoot, you don't know how long your dog's been gone. You don't know if they left right away or if they just left. You don't know where they are. And so it just makes it really complicated, and your place command just lost all of its value, 100%. And it's really frustrating. So don't let that happen. Put it right under the TV so you can watch them, and start building up those distractions. So we started about dropping kibble, dropping toys outside of the place area, maybe having family members come and maybe pet the dog and then walk away while your dog's still holding a place. That's very tempting for them to want to follow, hey, keep petting me. Or maybe having a family member squat down on the ground and talk to the dog, but not say the break word, right? They're just acting like company would when they come over and see a dog on a place command, where they're going to be like, oh, what a cute puppy, I love you. And then they walk away. And so you, as the handler who's holding the leash, get to intermittently reward that, whether that's verbal praise. And just because your dog's love language is maybe one specific thing, that doesn't mean you can't love them in the other areas. Just know that those other types of rewards aren't filling your dog's love tank as quickly, right? You have the jackpot love language, and then the other ones are okay, yeah, that's cool. And so you can still intermittently praise your dog when the family member walks away and your dog's but, and they don't try to step off. I would praise them for that. And I'd pet them and be oh, what a good dog. Or I would just say, good boy, I know that was tough. You did such a good job. Maybe give them a treat sometimes, but not always. And you want this to be intermittently. If you do it consistently every time, your dog's going to expect it. And then they're not going to be holding on to the impulse control of the command, but rather demanding the attention and affection from you during the command, okay? So that is how we start building up to those distractions. Eventually, you're gonna have family members or neighbors ring the doorbell. You want the place cot to be maybe far enough away that you can open and close the door, and still hold on to your dog's leash though, okay? So you don't want it too far away that you can't hold the dog's leash, because they can still bolt out that door faster than you can grab that leash flying by you. But practice having them knock on the door, you opening it, maybe shaking their hand or giving them a high five, or maybe an invisible high five if you don't want to do contact, and say thank you and close the door, and they walk away. Your dog's what just happened? That's weird. They didn't come inside. What's going on? And then maybe it happens 5 minutes later, and you open the door and you do the virtual high five, and then they walk away and you close the door. And just start practicing those mock scenarios for that Halloween evening. It's that simple. If you have any questions about the place command, or you're struggling to get your dog past a certain distraction on the threshold, or on the command, sorry, if you're struggling to get your dog past a certain distraction on the command, maybe go back a couple steps, think what's easier than what I'm trying to do right now, work on that, and then try to do the harder thing. Or if you're really just totally at a loss, like I don't know where to go from here, you can find this video, put it in the comments. I would love to give you some more advice and tips on how to get your dog to the next level. We have seen it all, we've heard it all, we've experienced it all. So we can definitely help you get your dog right back where you want them to be, as far as building that distraction ladder and having them ready, if not by this Halloween, by next Halloween. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me. This was a little bit longer than I normally do, but I had a lot of information I wanted to give you. So thanks so much, and we will talk to you next time. All right, guys, bye.